All right.
Welcome to Finding Heroes in Business. My name is Rob Herget. I am the founder and president of BoostYourBusiness.com. We are a full-scale digital marketing agency. I am the host, and I'm happy you all are here to watch the show. We have a very, very special guest today. Her name is Steph West, and she is doing some extraordinary things in helping children out there, and I am so glad to have you on the show today. Steph, tell the audience a little bit about you and what you're doing, and let's get the discussion started.
Yeah, absolutely. I am in San Antonio, Texas, and I teach autistic and ADHD kids how to make friends. So I have an in-person program here in Texas, and I also run classes via Zoom so that students from anywhere can join and be part of our program. It's what's typically considered a social skills group. That's what I do. The focus in my program is much more on social awareness than the traditional compliance-based social skills models. So the students get a lot of feedback from other kids in the program, and we're working a lot more on just developing skills that are a lot more useful out in the world as opposed to just rote social skills.
I think that's awesome. I have a lot of friends that have children that are autistic, and you said ADHD as well, right? So
Yeah.
honestly, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I don't know another entrepreneur that's not ADHD in my opinion. But I think that's incredible. So what does it look like logistically? What does it look like? They join your organization. What are some of the activities? What does it look like for them?
So for students who are in their first year in the program, they have an hour a week of direct instruction. We call that our lesson time. And I've created my own curriculum. And that's what we do during that hour is we focus on learning certain skills, certain strategies. We practice them together in the group, but there's nothing that the kids have to do here. So if they choose to use the skills, that's awesome. If they choose not to, that's also totally fine. They just recognize the social consequences of using the skills or not using the skills, if that makes sense. So we're together for an hour for the lessons. The same with when we're via Zoom, it's an hour for the lessons, and all the students are together. It's a very conversational hour. We're having a lot of discussions. The kids are asking questions. We're talking about things. They're throwing out scenarios. And then the second hour during the week is game time. And so that is where the kids all come together and they just hang out. And here in our in-person location, we have a bunch of games. They can play games. They can just hang out and chat. We have games that we can do online for the kiddos who are attending online. So it's just their opportunity to hang out and be social and put their skills to use with other kids who are similar to them. A lot of times students in my program don't have friends in school or in their community because they have not met other kids who are like them. And here, this is what we are.
Right.
So the other kids connect really quickly and really easily, and they find other kids that they really get along with. Our program's pretty big. So it's easy to find other kids that we feel similar to. Everybody in the world gravitates toward people that we feel similar to.
Right.
Whether that's our religion, our background, our neighborhood. So while my students can be friends with anybody they choose to out in the world, they typically choose other kids who are like them. And so this is a great place to find those other kids.
I think that's fantastic. What is the facility? What is it like? Is it a public facility? Where are they meeting when they're live?
It's just a building. I mean, there's absolutely nothing fancy or special. I joke that sometimes people ask, can we come tour your facility? It's literally just rooms with tables and chairs. There's nothing on the walls. It's rooms with tables and chairs and kids and games. Because I could do what I do out in the parking lot. I mean, the building itself just houses us. But like I said, there's kids attending on Zoom. So the building itself has nothing to do with the program. It's just where we exist.
And they
When
come
we
there
have kids
twice
there
a
in
week,
person.
or is it one time for 2 hours?
Either. So
Okay.
we have both options. Most students come 2 hours at a time. It's easier logistically for the parents.
That's what I was, yeah, I was wondering about that.
But they can also come on 2 different days. So some families do that as well.
And and how many, is it only offered 2 days? Or are you there for 5 days and they can choose from those 5 days of the week?
So right now we're in summer and things are a little up in the air for the fall as far as the schedule. Historically, we have been here multiple days a week and parents choose the day that works the best for them. And so every day we have different groups of kids coming in. They're doing the same thing, they're just on a different schedule. So that's what we've done historically. This is July, beginning of July. I am not sure what our schedule will look like for the fall, but that's how it's been historically, is parents can choose the schedule that works the best for them.
And what are the ages of these children? And are they together as all ages, or the older ones are kind of together and the younger ones are together? How does that work?
It's a great question. Our program is open to students who are 7 to 21. And once they're in our program, they can stay as long as they want to. So we've got students who've been here for 4 and 5 years at this point. And so we have students who are college age because they started when they were late high school and they've stayed. So we have kids all over the upper elementary, middle school, high school, young adult spectrum. For the lessons, they are in 2 different age groups by default because of the way our schedule works. We have an earlier time for younger kids and a later time for older kids. For game time, it's completely open by age. And a lot of people are kind of surprised by that. Sometimes parents of younger kids are a little concerned about having their kids around older kids. But in our program, older kids don't have the same conversations that their same age peers would be having, if that makes sense. They're
Right.
not talking about 17-year-old stuff like that kids might be at school or out in the community. That's not what our kids are talking about. And the kids get to know each other really well. We have kids across different age groups that have become really close friends because they have things in common. Some of them because they live in the same neighborhood. Some of them, have the same topic of interest, even though they may be 5 years apart. So we don't separate the kids by age. They do typically tend to separate themselves by age for the most part. So during game time, there will be pockets of different age group kids, but they can hang out with whomever they want to. In the summer, we have a summer camp. So that's what's happening, during the day in summer. And all the kids are together regardless of how old they are. But again, some of them have been here for 4 and 5 years. And so they know each other very well. Even if they don't attend on the same day during the school year, they get to see each other in the summer. So it's definitely a different approach than any other typical program for kids, based on how we don't separate by age. We also don't separate by quote unquote ability, which is another typical thing that happens because ability is subjective. Also, someone's cognitive skills and someone's age have nothing to do with their level of social awareness. So we have some 7-year-olds who are more socially aware than some of our 17-year-olds. And we have some of our kids who are in special education classes in school who are more socially aware than some of our kids who are in gifted classes. So it's, there's kind of this preconceived notion that the older a child is or the higher their IQ, that they should be learning with other kids who are similar. And the reality is that sometimes we get kids into the program who fit those criteria and they're struggling the most.
Interesting,
So
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
really a big melting pot around here, and it's pretty amazing.
Have you ever thought about it? I mean, maybe you're doing it where, I mean, if the kids are there for a long period of time, getting, maybe some of the older kids to sort of be almost like a mentor where
Oh,
you.
I pay them to be teaching assistants.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Because it just seems to me that, because I've seen it before and I've seen other organizations where, giving them a sense of authority, giving them a sense of purpose, as they grow older, and it just seemed to be value. I met a gentleman, actually, it was a husband and wife down here in South Florida, who's starting a nonprofit. Their adopted son is autistic. And they are starting a business. It's like an ice cream business where they kind of cater to parties, but it's all run by autistic individuals that are, that have the ability to do it, but still are going through, some issues and so forth.
Need
And
some support, yeah.
I love that. I love that whole sense of social entrepreneurship, and I met their son, and it just seeing how happy he was about being his own boss and being, feeling like he was making a contribution to the world and so forth. I don't know. To me, that's just an extraordinary thing. So I love that
Yeah,
you're
so
doing that.
yeah, our summer is a little bit different, but during the school year, when we just finished in May, I had three students, high school and young adult age, that have been with me for several years, and they are all paid teaching assistants in my program now. And not all of them, back to our discussion about IQ and ability, not all of them are students that somebody would walk in the door and think that that person works here. But you see how, um, some of them are just really outgoing and friendly, and they're always welcoming the other kids in and saying hello. Some of them help us with logistical things, making sure everybody's here, making sure we know who's coming and going, because we have a lot of kids coming and going. Some of them love to work directly with younger students or directly with new kids. So it's absolutely, and we even have some students who've been here for several years and have by default become, unpaid teaching assistants for some of the other kids, just because they've been here for so long, and they really like being
They're
in that
leaders.
role.
They're leaders.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
have a
like,
middle school student who's waiting to go to high school because he thinks that that's when you get a job here. So he keeps telling, like, he's waiting until he's in high school because,
I
he
think that's
thinks that it's
wonderful.
just kind of a natural thing.
Do you have any like partnerships or relationships, or have you thought about it with business people out there that perhaps there is a place that, as they get older, that may take them on as an employee, or some sort of business relationship?
Yeah, employment is not my role. So I try to stay in my own zone
Okay.
of social. Yeah, in the past I'm come from education, so we used to have a school in my program that I ran. I've tried, I've done all kinds of things, but I have learned to stay in my zone.
Okay.
So the answer to your question would be no, because helping the kids with employment is not my zone.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Well, tell me, first off, tell me a success story that's just absolutely blown you away since you've had this business.
Yeah, I'll tell you probably my go-to story. I have a student who, when he first started, which was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I think it's been a while. When he first started, he was in middle school, and he may still qualify as the most stuck kid I've ever known. I think he may still hold that title. So
When you say stuck, what
refers
does that
to our
mean?
cognitive
Okay.
processes of being able to do something different, being able to take on new ideas, just being flexible cognitively. None of that was going on with this kiddo. He I think had a lot of anxiety, which in my kiddos, anxiety can look different and can often be mistaken for behavior issues, defiance, when really it's anxiety. So this kiddo was, he was disrespectful to the other kids. He was very quick to give other kids, feedback and redirection, but he wouldn't take it for himself.
Huh.
So he very quickly alienated all the other kids in my program, which is hard to do. I
Aw.
mean, that's a tall order, but he was just really unfriendly and unkind to everybody. I remember during game time, there was only 2 games that he was willing to play. And so if the other kids wanted to play something different, he just refused. He was just not going to do it. Sometimes when something would happen and a kiddo would apologize, for example, one time his turn accidentally got skipped in a game and he got really upset. You skipped my turn. And the other kiddo would say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And he would say, apology unaccepted. So just, nobody wanted to be around this kid. And within a few months, the thing that I love so much about him and about the program is that I have a relationship with my students where they know that I am here for them, that I don't tell them what to do. That's not how it works. And so he and I developed such a level of trust that when I would tell him something, he would listen to me. And even if he didn't always see my point or agree with it, he trusted me enough to try it. And we started shifting his reputation by me helping him see the outcome of the choices he was making, right? These are the natural social consequences of the choices that you are making. This is what's happening. And he was receptive to that, and he started shifting. He also would never have a social conversation with another kid. If kids were talking, he was always just quiet, never engaging with other kids in a social way. After a few months, he started to kind of shift and morph. And within probably the first year, his reputation had completely changed.
Wow.
This kiddo is
That's hard to
here.
do.
He actually just graduated from high school. So he's still here as a paid teaching assistant in my program.
Wow.
Now. And everybody loves this kid. They ask about him. They wonder where he is if it's not his schedule to be here. I mean, he is like a role model to the other students that are here. And only a few of them were here when he started to remember that journey. But he is probably my favorite example. Number one, because he's been here so long. But number two, because I think he really was one of the most challenging kids that I've worked with. And just how much he was able to create a different reputation for himself.
Let me ask you, when he was going through his real struggles, did he care? Did he realize the other kids didn't like him? Did he ever get upset and say, "Oh, nobody likes me"? Did he understand that whole concept of that he was really dooming himself?
That's a great question. What I notice is that my students have 3 different levels of awareness when it comes to reputation. Reputation is the whole point of my program, by the way. So kids come in with 3 different levels of awareness. The basic level is kids who have no concept of reputation. They may have even never heard that word before. They have no concept that other people have thoughts and feelings about them, and that there's a correlation between how we act and what people think about us. Just completely oblivious to that concept. The second level of awareness is kids who know everybody else's reputation. They can tell you who they like and why they like them, and who they don't like and why they don't like them, but have no concept of what other people think about them. So sometimes I'll say, What is something that you do that annoys other people? Nothing. I don't do anything that annoy. We all do things that annoy other people, right? Everybody in
Right.
the world is
This is
annoying.
not
That's
this
one of
is
the,
not
yeah.
specific to those with autism or ADHD. I will tell you this. It is
Yeah,
all over the
yeah.
place.
Yeah, that's part of the program, right? Is everybody does things that annoy other people. We're all annoying to somebody. And so just recognizing that they don't have that awareness that they do things that bother other people, because we all do. But people at that level can point out how everybody else bothers them, right? And then the kids who are at the third level of awareness are very aware of what other people think about them. They are the kids who will come to me and say, Steph, all the other kids at school tell me I'm annoying, but they don't know why. So that's a hard level to be at, is to recognize other kids avoid me, other kids, maybe pick on me. Nobody wants to be my partner when we have a group project. Nobody wants to hang out with me at lunch, but I have no idea why.
Oh.
So that's the third level, is how can you change that when you don't know what's causing it? And so that's why in my program, that's what we teach the kids. They get to choose what they want their reputation to be. It's usually smart, friendly, or kind. A smart, friendly, or funny. They get to choose what's important to them, and then I help them create that reputation. Because I'll give you my classic example. Our kids typically do things that they think are giving them the reputation that they want, and they're actually sabotaging themselves. For example, most people want to have a reputation for being smart. It's kind of a universal thing. So a lot of my students think that one way to get that reputation is by correcting other people. Because look, I'm showing you how much I know, right? I correct other people.
And they're
But
annoying the
does that
living daylights out of everybody.
exactly. It gives you a reputation for being a smart ass. Right? That's what it gives you. And the word annoying is our go-to word here, because that's what happens. But they don't see that connection. They think that they are showing everybody how intelligent they are. The same as if they want to talk for 20 minutes about something they know a lot about, right? They think that they're showing everybody how intelligent they are, when really they're alienating themselves by doing that. They don't see the social consequences of their choices. So that's what we do in my program, is I show them the connections, and then again, they can make whatever choices they want to, but now they know the social consequences of the choices that they're making.
I think that's really cool, and it actually my youngest son was to a certain degree a lot like I was. I was kind of the you know talkative, rambunctious kid at school, not always making the best decisions in the world. And my youngest one, definitely had ADHD, and he would get in trouble at school. Nothing bad, just either too much talking or being a pest or whatever. And then a few times he would come home, he'd be all upset, and he's like, "Dad, I got blamed for something that I didn't do." And I had to have that discussion with him. I said, no offense, Stephen, if you're seeing this. I said, Stephen, that's your reputation. That's what you've created. You are the talkative kid. You're the one that's acting out and doing all of those things. And until you change your reputation, you're going to be the first one the teacher's going to look at. And with any other child, if they have a reputation, they're going to be looked at that way almost until, proven innocent, and it's going to take a while to change that reputation. And I'm so impressed that you're able to do it with these kids, because that just seems like it's an enormous amount of work, and particularly if a child has a hard time correlating their actions to their reputation. I commend you for being able to do that, because you're right. Reputation is, I'm a marketing guy. Reputation is your biggest asset in business.
It's everything.
It's your
Yeah.
biggest asset as an individual. It's your biggest asset as a business. And
And just
I
to
think that's
clarify,
amazing.
I'm not the one doing the work to change their reputation. They are. So just to clarify that, I'm just the coach who's here to guide them, they are the ones making it happen. But they also have to want to, right? I mean, it's just like going to therapy or changing a habit or, do anything else in the world. Like, people have to want to.
Right.
And so when the kids come in, I would say that's another difference in my program too, is we have kids that come running in the door. I mean, the kids want to be here. That's why they stay for years. They want to be here. But I just want to give them, because I'm not making them, do social skills. They are recognizing that they want things to be different, and they are making the changes. It's hard. It is so hard to change the choices that you make and the way that you show up in the world and your perception that you've always had of how things work. So yeah, I am, it's one of the cool things about having the kids for so long is I have that long-term perspective. I can remember 3 years ago when they started, even one kiddo I have that's been here for a year, and significant difference in her reputation from last summer to this summer, significant. And her mom will even send me an email that the school principal made a comment about it.
I was going to ask you about that. Is feedback from the parents, feedback from the kids? Do they? I mean, how many come back and at some point and say, hey, Ms. West, I things are changing. I have a different reputation, or my, the kids at school are being nicer. Is there a lot of that? Are they recognizing it?
Yeah, we're so casual around here. They call me Steph.
Okay.
But it doesn't happen so much from the kids because they are typically so socially unaware when they start the program that they don't remember what things were like when they started. So even my kiddo that I used as my example, he does not remember much about what things were like for him when he started, because his level of awareness was so different than it is now, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It's just really interesting concept that.
Yeah, and I think for the kids,
it's probably a good thing, I guess.
They don't always recognize that there's a reason things have changed, if that makes sense. They may be able to look back and say, oh, 3 years ago, all the other kids were mean to me, didn't like me, and now that's not the case. But I don't know that they always, because they're kids, I don't know that they always recognize that there's a reason for that other than just life, right? The parents, my favorite feedback that I get is when it's around the holidays and my kids are seeing family members that they don't see regularly, because that's when people notice. When you haven't seen somebody for a few months, because we see them, their parents see them every day. I see them once or twice a week. We see the progression. And so you lose track of how far we've come because you're in it. But a couple weeks ago, I ran into one of my families at the grocery store, and he's in middle school, and his mom said that they had seen some family. We're in summer right now, so they had gone and seen some family, and that family commented on his ability to have a conversation. That the last time they had seen him, he didn't have the skill set to have a conversation with them. And now they said, they can actually ask him questions and have a conversation. And he's got social anxiety. And so before he would just kind of shut down. And now he actually has developed enough confidence to have a conversation with them. So that's the favorite way I get feedback is when family members haven't seen this student for a while, because I think that's really where you can step back and see things on a bigger scale. But even I have a coworker here that's been with me for 4 years, I think now. And so he and I will often reminisce and be like, oh my gosh, do you remember 3 years ago when so-and-so, was doing this and this? And yeah, sometimes we have to think back to notice how different things are. But it's funny because we have up to 15 kids here at a time. And sometimes we joke that like we could go get dinner because they just, I mean,
They're just kind of in their own world, dealing
yes,
with with each
they're
other.
hanging out, they're having conversations, they enjoy each other, they're doing their thing. We're like, we're just here to make sure everybody's like safe, I guess.
Right, right, right. Well, you know what? Honestly, you're a great example of what this podcast was designed to do. Was really, just showcase and spotlight people who are making an impact. And you know, if these were adults, you'd be making an impact. But these are children. These are children that, in many cases, there's a lot of them that aren't going to make these changes in life. And think about it from their perspective. I mean, it kind of gives me goosebumps as you were describing a couple of these things, because that one child that's your favorite story, you know, God help him if he wasn't able to make that. He may not feel all of it inside, but he's going to feel some of it, I'm pretty sure. And to go through an entire life as, I hate to say, but as a miserable human being to other people, but he's got to feel it somewhat inside. And now all of a sudden, he's like, incredibly popular. You made a difference in somebody's life. I mean, the same thing as a surgeon, saving somebody who was, on their deathbed. Probably even more so, because now he's got what, a 99% chance of having a happy life. And what's more valuable than that? I don't know. I'm like so thoroughly impressed. And this program that you put together, have you talked to people in other areas of the country as far as maybe taking your curriculum and opening this up in other areas?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. So yes, I started that, excuse me, about a year ago. I got my curriculum. It's licensed now. So my curriculum is 32 weeks. And so I got it licensed, and now people have the option to become licensed to use my curriculum. I think so. I come from the public education system. That's my background. And people in the school system, and even, therapists, counselors, speech pathologists, I can say from experience that one of the biggest challenges is that social is so abstract that people do not know how to teach it. But it's as a teacher in the public school system, you're in charge of social skills. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. What am I supposed to do with this? And so my curriculum gives people everything they need to teach my 32-week program. The lessons are all scripted. It has videos of me actually teaching the program to real kids. It's got activity sheets that go along with it. It has everything, because that's what I know from experience is the biggest challenge when you're in a role like that is, what do I teach these kids, right? Like, I'm being tasked with this thing that I don't know how to do. So that's one option I have, is people can become licensed to use my curriculum. The other option is I also coach people how to start their own social club like mine. I am actually an accidental entrepreneur. Running a business is not my forte at all. So I do not want to go across the globe starting other versions of my location. That is not what I want to do. But I am really loving teaching other people how to do it, because I'm a teacher. That's what I am. So I love teaching other people how to do it. I'm in Texas. I have someone in Ohio whose summer camp starts in a week. So she's a mom. She's got 4 of her own kids who are all neurodivergent, autism, ADHD.
Wow.
She actually looked into my program for one of her kids who was really struggling, and then was like, well, I could do this. Because really anybody can do what I do. I'm just here to make the business part of it much easier than it was for me, because I struggled the first few years. This is not my jam. So I also am coaching people how to start their own club like mine anywhere.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
And that
it's
makes
super
more sense
exciting
for
for
you. I
me
mean, it really
too.
does, and it makes more sense
Yeah, yeah.
for them to have a local person. And honest to God, it could be, whether it's a bit, it turns into a business for them, or it turns into, maybe they don't work, and there's a few moms that get together and say, "Hey, I want to make a difference, and let's do this."
Yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
think there's this. When I first started, this was my side business, right? I was working full time in the school system. So this could absolutely be additional income. It could be a side business. It could be a summer camp. Or like me, it could be your whole thing, you know? So there's the world of possibilities is completely open. But I think a lot of people think I could never do that. I am living proof that you absolutely can. I have ADHD. So the running of the business is so challenging for me, but I figured it out. And so already I'll tell you that the one who's starting in Ohio, I haven't touched base with her since her registration window closed a few days ago. But last time I talked to her, I think she had 12 kids registered for her camp.
wow.
My first year, I had four, and two of them were kids of my friends. And my second year, I think I had 11. So she's already got more kids in her program than I had
Well,
in
she got
2
four of
years.
them her own, so
Yeah. Well, no, no, they're not. Her most of her kids are older.
okay.
So just one is her own. But yeah, my goal is to help people to use what I've learned the hard way and to help people not have to learn it the hard way. So my goal is to help people. If you want to do this, let me help you do it much quicker and much easier than I did.
Yeah, no, I think, I honestly think that's the best way to do it, and I think you're gonna, once you get the word out there, I think you're gonna do a ton with that, and it's gonna make a huge difference in what you're doing. Let me ask you, what motivated you originally to start this as a business and to really start doing it full time?
Yeah, I would say it was. I think sometimes we don't realize the reasons for things until later. So I was working in the public school system. I've been a special ed teacher, a behavior specialist, a school administrator. And at the time, I was a behavior specialist, which was a great job for me because you go around the school district to different campuses and you're working with different kids and teachers and administrators. And so I really need that kind of, flexibility in my life. So it's a great position for me. It's really good at that job because I understand, the way my kids think.
Right.
But what was happening in a role like that is even other people would refer to me as the firefighter. So I would get called in when things are exploding, right? When kids are being aggressive, when they're running away, when the whole class has to leave because somebody's destroying a classroom. That's when I get called in, which is fine. Like yeah, I can let me help. Um, but what I would notice is if I'm sitting in a classroom and I'm observing a certain student, is I'm noticing the five other kids in that classroom that are not on anybody's list. They're not on anybody's radar, but they're socially isolated. Nobody's talking to them. They are not talking to anybody else. They are anxious. They're withdrawn, or they're being really goofy and silly and trying to get everybody's attention, but nobody likes them. And so it's just in every classroom, in every school, I just started noticing all these other kids. Now, who's that kid? Tell me about that kid. Who's that? Who's that? And it's all these kids. I call them floaters. They are going through their day, they're going through their week, they're going year to year. They're not struggling academically usually. And there's no support for them because they're not extreme,
They're in the
and
middle.
they're not failing,
Right.
right? But they have no friends, or they have really crummy social skills. And I just was becoming overwhelmed with the enormity of this problem. And so I actually went to a conference in February of 2016. I went to a conference that was about teaching social skills. And the people that were presenting the conference have their own clinic and their own curriculum. And I was very familiar with their curriculum. And I just decided in February that, oh, yeah, I'm totally going to do that. And I'm a very impulsive person. And so that summer in May, I started my business. And that summer, I had 4 kids in my summer camp. And then, we've 7 years later,
That's
we've grown from
amazing.
there. Along the way, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So I just got my diagnosis 2 years ago, which is
I've
so
never heard that
phenomenal,
as an
right?
adult. I've never heard somebody say
It's
they've.
very common for women to
Okay.
be diagnosed as an adult because we look very differently as kids than boys, right? Girls and boys with ADHD look very different. I was great in school. I have 2 master's degrees. I mean, school was not a challenge for me. Running a business melted me. But I think in school, everything was so structured that I had that external structure. And even in a job, there's external structure. And then when I went out on my own, I completely fell apart. And that's where that came from. But that's my journey. I eventually, after a couple years, got to where I left my full-time job, and now this is what I do. But it's so interesting how often I'll tell somebody what I do, meeting somebody for the first time, and I'll tell them what I do. And probably about half the time, the response I get is, I wish you were around when I was a kid. I get that response probably half the time I tell somebody what I do.
Huh.
And so it's both confirming and disappointing at the same time, right? It confirms the importance of this program, but it's also disappointing that there's so many people who struggled so much to grow up, right?
Right.
To make friends, and yeah. So that's my journey. I didn't know when I started it that I was one of us.
That's it's,
But
but that's part of the journey. Is it's anything worth having is never easy. But can let me ask you in the 7 years, can you describe a failure or a setback that you had in the business that really kind of gave you a great learning lesson?
how about being shut down for lockdown? So lockdown happened.
But you mean for COVID?
Yeah. At the time, I was running a school, so we had our evening classes. I was also running a school here, and then COVID happened. We had gone on spring break and never came back from spring break. I like to joke that even our guinea pig and our hamsters had gone on spring break with different kids and never came back.
Aw,
But yeah, we were closed for 2.5 months,
wow.
and several things happened as a result of that. One of them is that my students weren't able to come, right? That we did not have a program. Another thing that happened during lockdown is neurotypical kids were still interacting with their friends. They're FaceTiming, they're playing video games together, they're still having their on tech group chats, right? My kids aren't doing any of that. So neurotypical kids were still able to maintain their social connections. My kids, their social connections were my program. And so
And
those like fell out from
Zoom
underneath them.
doesn't really cover that.
Yeah. So my student, and when I say my kids, yes, I'm referring to kids in my program, but I'm also referring to neurodivergent kids everywhere, right? My kids were really disproportionately affected by that socially because they tend to not talk to other kids on their phone, right? Their interactions tend to be in person. And so when that goes away, they have no social interactions aside from with their family. And when we came back from lockdown, which fortunately we were able to do that summer, lots of my kids didn't come back because their parents didn't want them, in a public environment. So just from a numbers perspective, when we went into lockdown, my program had about 75 students. And when we came back, we had maybe 40.
Oh,
So there were lots of repercussions from that. And even like this is my sole source of income. So just personally, that was a really rough time for me as well, because, small business owner, it's my only source of income. And it was really awesome that the government was paying, we got the government grants to pay people's salaries. But I still had rent on a building to pay with no income coming in to pay the rent on my building.
Right.
I mean, there's things like that people don't. My staff was all on unemployment. I don't need government grants to pay people on unemployment. I do need help paying the rent on my building, right? So just
Did your employees come back after?
I actually changed my model before we came back from lockdown. A couple things I changed. One of them was I stopped running the school. We were open 60 hours a week before lockdown. That meant I was here 60 hours a week. And during lockdown, I just decided that's not sustainable. So I didn't reopen the school when we came back from lockdown. So we no longer have the school. I also, at the time, I had 3 teachers under me that were actually teaching the groups, and I was more of like the
overseer,
the administrator,
right?
I changed that when we came back, and I went back to being the main person teaching the kids. So some of my staff came back. Some of them I found other opportunities for, and some of them did not come back. But now I just have one person that works with me because I'm back in the role of being the main, the teacher for the program.
Has the amount of kids come back to pre-COVID or
no? We've never gotten back to pre-COVID numbers. Never. I will say though that I don't do any intentional marketing for my program. Before COVID, I would do, resource fairs and I don't do any intentional marketing because at this point, people in my community are doing it all for me. Parent referrals are really high. Doctors refer kids to me, schools refer kids to me, therapists refer kids. And so I have to say our reputation in the community has grown so much that people are coming without me, having to find them. But yeah, we've never gotten back to pre-COVID numbers, but I also have not done marketing, for myself that may change that. Right now, my focus is on expanding our Zoom program so that I can support kids who don't live here, because there's kids all over the country that don't have access to anything like this.
Right.
And so that's my focus right now. We have a waiting list, and we have 4 students on our waiting list that don't live here. One of them is in Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've gotten emails in the last couple months from Germany, from Australia, from South Africa, from people asking about the program, and some of them are moms who are saying, mom in Australia, I really need to bring your program to Australia.
Why don't you reinvent how Zoom can be used? It's I think that'd be really interesting is create, you can do anything with virtual backgrounds, create an environment nobody seemed to do in Zoom. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, the challenge is time zones. Right. So that's the challenge for people who aren't in the US or Canada is time zones. Because I am not going to be up teaching classes 12 hours.
Right.
I'm just not. But
I don't blame you.
So for people who are in the US or Canada, it's the same as if they were to come here. It's just that we're on Zoom instead of them coming here. But I did Zoom for about 2 years after lockdown. We did a hybrid model. And it worked really well. It worked better than I would have expected it to. So that's why I know that I can teach the program via Zoom. It's just a matter of, getting the kids in who are a good candidate for that. But yeah, so that's my focus right now is on growing our Zoom enrollment and on growing my licensing and coaching program, so that more kids have access to it.
I love the licensing and coaching, and honestly, it's not there yet, but this whole meta world, you give it a couple of years probably, and you literally could have kids all over the world feeling like they're in your little classroom or whatever you call it, your youth facility. I think that's going to open all sorts of things, which I think would be extremely cool. Hadn't really thought about it with children going through some of the things that they're going through, but honestly, it's like real life in some areas. So we are winding down. Just real quickly, what does the future look like? Where do you see your business going? And are you looking to expand? Are you looking to kind of pivot? What do you see a couple of years from now?
I am not a person who plans for the future.
Okay.
I just don't have that part of me. I see myself as a very opportunistic person. I love to just see what happens. I love to see how things play themselves out, what opportunities come along. I've never really had a long-term plan for the business. I've just seen how things go. I think, sometimes people will approach me with things that I've never thought of before, and then I'm off on that track. The licensing and coaching, is definitely the direction that I really see myself going in, because it allows me to help not only more kids, but more of me. It allows me to help more teachers, more parents to do this thing that I do, because not only is this super awesome for the kids, it is the best part of my day. It's been amazing for my life to be able to create something like this. And so I definitely want to help as many other people do that as I can, and help people like me who, they're not in it to be a business owner. They're in it to do what it is that we do. They just have to run a business to be able to do it.
Right.
So that's kind of my target audience, is people who are like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But yeah, that's really as much as I know. I also clearly I'm very comfortable with public speaking. I have no problem, jumping on a camera, having a microphone. I'm looking into doing more speaking and presenting and training, which is not really something I do right now because I have to be here
right.
to run the classes. But that's another thing I'm really interested in, is doing more of that stuff wherever the opportunities may be. But yeah, that's I don't know, would be probably my most realistic answer to that question.
Well,
find out.
You're living day by day, so that's always a good thing. You never want to live in the past. You really don't want to live in the future. So see where each day goes. But I think you're doing amazing things. I think everybody that's watched this, I am quite sure, is impressed. Give the name of your website where they can find out about your organization and perhaps reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's starfishsocialclub.org. Starfishsocialclub.org.
And where did Starfish come from?
There's actually, let me see if I do. There's actually I did not make this up. This is the Starfish story. So basically, it's a common story. When I start talking about it, you may recognize it, but it's a story about a girl walking along a beach, and a bunch of starfish had washed up onto the shore. And so she's starts to see them, and she starts picking them up and throwing them back into the ocean. And she's running from one to the next to the next. And this man comes along and he said, "Why are you wasting your time on that? You can never save all of them." And she runs to the next one and throws it into the ocean. And she says, "I just saved that one."
Great story.
So that's where it came from. Not that I'm saving anybody. I know I'm
right. No. I get it.
But it's.
But you are in some cases.
I can make they're saving themselves, really, right? Like, they're the ones putting in the effort. I can make a difference one student at a time. So that's where it came from. It also sounds really cool. That's where it came from. Just the concept of I might not be able to help everybody, like all the people who say, "I wish you were around when I was a kid," right?
Right.
But I can help one student at a time.
I think that's
Where it
great.
came from.
Love that philosophy. And is that you should have it as a tagline on your logo or website? It should be your tagline.
My tagline, which I don't ever use, so nobody would ever know this, but the tagline is "Be you, be strong, belong."
I love
That's
that.
actually my tagline, but I never use it.
But the I'm sure people have always kind of wondered, where did Starfish come from, and just having that line at the end, I think would be great on your website.
Yeah, that's a good point. I used to have this a long time ago on the website, but with my brain, I change things like every other day. So, my website is on probably its 107th iteration right now.
Well, that's always a good thing. But it makes life interesting. I'm telling you, I've never been diagnosed, but I guarantee I have ADHD. I need cliff notes. I'll be more than happy to put things together, but I am not reading that manual. You've got to read the manual. Just tell me what to do, and I'll do it. That is my existence. That is my life. But but most business people I know that are entrepreneurs are the same way. They're reception is just attention is not long lasting. But I loved having you on the show. I thought it was a great discussion, and hopefully those that have watched and will watch in the future got a lot out of this, and hopefully they can connect with you if they want to see how they can bring your type of curriculum to their community. And please reach out to Steph at our website. And again, thank you very much. And everybody out there, be a hero in your business, be a hero in your community, and hopefully maybe one day you'll come on the podcast as well. But Steph, thank you very much, and thank you for making the impact that you're making.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.
All right, you take care.